designed and delivered numerous training sessions in financial services with Sun Life, ING, and BDO. And she managed executive education programs for the top 2 business schools in Toronto, Rotman and Schulich. As a professional coach and facilitator, Maria focuses on career management. She provides one-to-one coaching for new grads and young professionals who feel lost, and entrepreneurs who need direction, and to others who feel stuck and need a career shift. You may catch Maria presenting programs on various topics including DISC assessment, communication, and leadership skills. As a high school student, Maria was highly influenced by junior achievement and Toastmasters. She gives back by volunteering her time, facilitating money management and presentation skills in the youth leadership program for both junior achievers and Toastmasters. It's full circle. Round of applause, please, for Maria Fuller. Nick Pockenick currently works for OMERS, the Ontario Municipal, what does it stand for? Employee Retirement System. Yes, again, the pension fund for firefighters and police and so on. He works at OMERS as a training and educational consultant. Nick has been with OMERS since 2008, holding several training and educational roles. He currently oversees all technical training at OMERS. Nick has been in the adult education space for over 15 years, previously at the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan.
Oh, wow. That's
Nick has been a Toastmaster for over 3 years, holding VP, Ed, and President roles with OMERS, and is a charter member of another advanced club in Division F called TGIF. Last year, Nick was the Area 53 Governor and the District 60 Webmaster. He's also delivered a number of club officer training sessions to many Toastmasters in the last 2.5 years. He's participated in all 4 contests, and he came in 3rd place at the International Speech Contest in 2003. Round of applause for Nick. And alphabetically, S for Shannon.
S for mistake. Wow, I didn't know you would read them out like this.
I want to make sure, you know what, from a credibility standpoint, it sounds better when I'm saying this than when you are.
Right.
Shannon's a member of Toronto #1 and Speaking from Experience Advanced Toastmasters Club. She's a writer by trade and a storyteller by heart. Shannon helps people, especially alpha females, change makers, and daredevils, find their authentic voice without sounding weird or emotional. Shannon has interviewed hundreds of friendly and not so friendly people, and she believes that stories are the way to open hearts, eyes, and minds, in that order. Shannon's work has appeared in newspapers, magazines, including the Toronto Star and Chatelaine, and has been featured on radio and television. She's been called a cheerleader in jackboots, a clown with a knife, and a midwife who makes painful stuff fun.
Really?
Not literally.
Shannon's sweet spot and her soft spot are reserved for people who believe that their stories don't matter. People who believe that they're not creative, interesting, or have anything worth saying. Those people are our lighthouses. Those are the voices we need to hear so that we can bring more light and hope into the world. A round of applause, please.
Thanks for writing that.
Shannon couldn't have said that any better herself. So let's start with an easy question. Describe your journey in becoming a trainer. Let's start with Nick.
My journey into becoming a trainer was at the Teachers Pension Plan at that time. So I started there, coming fresh out of a banking position. I started there as a QA analyst. really just looking over documentation, making sure that it's correct before it walks out the door to a member. I did that for about 3 years, and my boss approached me and said, you know, you've got some students coming in, so how would you like to help them learn the role, because you're going to be doing it in the summer. So I said, sure, that'd be great. I'd love to do that. So I did that, and as she watched me do the program, we create the program and train the students, she said, you've got a really good knack for this. There's a training position coming up in the organization, and I know the manager that's hiring. Would you be interested in that role? I said, sure, why not? It's a step up for me in career path. Never really thought of it before, but sure, that'd probably be something I'd enjoy. So I took the role on, and that was sort of the first day of the rest of my life. So far, 15 years later, I'm still in the adult education field, doing one pension plan to another pension plan, and really, I couldn't have picked a role or a profession that better suited me. If I wasn't doing that, I probably wouldn't pick a teaching. I'm not sure why that is, but I love teaching, I love education. It gives me that much, it gives me pleasure just to make sure that I've impacted somebody in a positive way.
Thank you, Nick. Shannon, how would you describe your journey?
My journey so far. First off, I actually don't identify as a trainer. I really don't train people to do things, right? I believe that all of us can story. But when I think of the moment that my personal and professional life changed, I in fact was on my back. And let's think about that. And, so for those wanting to get hired, I was on my back. The first gig that really sent me on a different let's say tangent. And it was actually a call from a childhood friend. So to those looking for how to get into the business, look to the people you know. It's absolutely true. And she was up in my hometown, Thunder Bay, and she said, you know, Shannon, and my back was out, by the way, that's why I was on my back. And I took the call because it's my childhood best friend, and she said, you know, we're up here, I'm an addiction counselor, as you know, and we're putting together our methadone clinics and the health unit about how we can reduce stigma around addiction and how we can increase awareness around recovery. For people who are living in recovery, we hear about Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, where people always off the wagon and wild as opposed to people who are living in recovery. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a town meeting because, you know, addiction's really big up here, up north. We're going to have a meeting, and then we're going to do all the boring stuff about methadone and get all that out of the way, and then we're going to bring up some storytellers. And they're going to talk, you know, their lived experience. And as kind of woo as I was on muscle relaxants, I said to them, I said, why? So you're going to bore an angry audience with a whole bunch of stuff. Bring out your storytellers, and then the idea also was, and then the storytellers are going to take Q&A. And I lost my mind. I thought, why would you do that? You're actually putting already vulnerable people, but let's just say people, in front of a hostile crowd. And then you're gonna have them share, and then they're gonna be ultimately, they're gonna get all this hostility at them. And from there became the workshop, you know, my story is your story, and structuring something where leading, having meetings. And I mean, addiction is loaded, right? We're talking about problem and solution. You have people in recovery who believe the problem is very different from people who are like, that ain't my problem, junkie, right? So from there, that's where I really fell into what now is called transformational storytelling, and that both the teller and the listener are changed and they both benefit. So we've had phenomenal, I will say, impact where you have people, these are northern crowds, these are tough crowds, like we're dealing with sexism, racism, poverty, all of it. And you have people listening to other people who look different from them going, good God, you know, that's me. You're me, you know, and that's where, from then on, I thought, you know, I was built for this, and
so I have a
that's
quick question. You said that you don't see yourself as a trainer, and yet, from the stuff you were saying in class, and the stuff we were talking about storytelling, isn't there a component of training going on in that? What you're doing, you're changing. When you say transforming people, isn't that, you know, training in discussion?
Marita, what do you think? I don't want to be chatty Cathy.
I'll go back to that actually.
Oh, now you go to the panel?
No, I'll go back to that as I deliver mine, of course.
Very, to your answer,
You're right.
Thank you.
You're right.
Transformational training, would you be in agreement that it's,
Yes.
that we're talking the same?
Okay, well, my journey started off when I was in university and I wanted to go into the education field, right? So when you apply to go to do that, you also have to do some volunteer work at the school. Well, while I was looking for volunteer work at the school, I was also working part-time as a receptionist in a very, very corporate environment on the executive floor. So I got to dress up really fancy like everybody else. And so when I went to my old school, my old grade school, and was thinking of volunteering, I couldn't do it anymore, right? Because I didn't like how everybody was dressed at the school. I liked how everybody was dressed in my corporate environment. And I know that sounds horrible, but at age 19, you're influenced that way, right? So I decided, nope, not gonna do the traditional education way. So what happened with me was I became involved in financial services and loved it for a little while, didn't want to do it anymore, and my heart was back into education. So how do I go about doing that? I go into corporate training instead. So that fulfilled my things about dressing up and being in the corporate field. And it's really funny that now I'm actually back at the schools teaching grade 7 and 8. So you go back to sort of what is in your core. But throughout those years, I was in financial services. I was the SME, which is the subject matter expert. So I got hired into mutual fund companies because I could train those people. And when we think about training, if you're training something specific, like people need to know how to use a system, they need to know the ABCs of a particular product, to me that's training, right? If it's leadership skills, then that's transformational. So I agree. There's training involved in transformational, and it's the storytelling that will help that. So again, I was a subject matter expert. I went on and took courses in learning and development, and then now, instead of being the subject matter expert, I'm actually the consultant now that people will come to and ask, what kind of program can we deliver for this group? And so I may not know anything about the actual industry. So for example, I got hired at ING, and it was in P&C insurance, right, property and casualty. Had no background with that at all, but they wanted my learning and development skills in order to create an underwriting school for 3 weeks, in order to create training programs for, across Canada. And one of the stories that I'd like to share with you is we did a survey. So remember the Addies, so you do an analysis. So I did an analysis of the underwriters, and the top topic that came in was heat sources, wood stoves, and oil tanks, right? So I had to deliver a program on that, right? Do I look like somebody that knows anything about it? No, not at all. So I have to contact 3 subject matter experts, work with them. We have to create a program, so PowerPoint presentation, we have a booklet, and we went on the road with it. And so again, when you're thinking about learning and development or becoming a facilitator, you don't necessarily have to be the subject matter expert, but you will have to work with them, right? So I worked with 3, we went on the road, it was fantastic. I can tell you a little bit about some of those oil tanks, right? But when you think about creating learning, think of it also as an event, okay? So when I created this program, we created the presentation, but also because it had to do with specific things and it had to do with insurance, I also contacted companies that could have their marketing people come in and bring in the specific examples of their oil tanks, like the material, so people could see it. So I wanted to touch all the senses, right? So they could see things, they could feel things. We would have a video playing about fire because it was also about fire. But the one thing that I had to keep in mind with all this was the fact that what was the objective of the training program? The underwriters wanted to know about this, and why? Because they had to fill out a questionnaire and they didn't understand the questionnaire. So at the end of the session, will they understand how to complete that questionnaire? So that was what I wanted to tell you about that, is that you don't have to be the subject matter expert, but you will work with them. As long as you know the fundamentals of learning, which is the analysis, the development, the design, the implementation, and then how is it evaluated. So I went from there, doing that kind of technical stuff, to leadership. And when I started doing leadership programs at ING, then I wanted to learn a lot more. So I went and moved to the Rotman and Schulich areas of education and dealt with some fantastic profs and met a lot of industry leaders. And then after that was over, I don't know, I had this feeling of working with a firm. So I got myself involved with an accounting firm and managed their whole learning and development department and introduced Toastmasters, because a lot of people were coming to me asking me for presentation skills courses. And I didn't have the budget to send everybody on one, so we implemented the Toastmasters Club. That's my job.
So I'm going to throw out a question just broadly. Feel free to jump in as you like. What's your strength as a trainer? What do you consider to be a real strength that you have as a trainer? And what's your favorite thing about being a trainer? Don't all answer at once.
Oh, right in the middle. Oh, let me go first, please. Thanks, Nick. I would, as much of a chatterbox as I am, believe it or not, when I was freelance writing full time, you become a listener, and you always know when you've met a writer, because often you really enjoy them. And then if Nick were to say, oh yeah, you really like that girl over here, what does she do? He'll have no idea. Oh, and where does she live? He'll have no idea, because writers ultimately draw other people out. Right? We don't like to talk about ourselves. So although I like to say that I come from a family of storytellers, like in my family, my father would hold court and sit at his table, and he would look at his 5 children, and he would want you to tell him a story. And if you didn't have a story, you quite literally didn't really have a place at that table. Okay? So yeah, so stories were currency in my family. Now, I also come from a family of secrets, right? So one of the things about stories is that when we tell stories, we shape reality. And I recognize that. So when you're working with people who are wanting to share their story for the only reason, the only hope that they want to help maybe one other person on the planet, I will do everything and anything for them. I am fierce. And I will be quiet as well, and honor and listen to that story. So I would say that if anything, so much of my own voicelessness, my own past, that has brought me to this place perfectly, really, our tribulations, our failures, and our flops, somehow the people I work with on some level recognize that, and not because I tell them, but I believe because they feel it. Because remember too, and I disagree with that slide about the younger man and all the 60-something women, you don't have to look like your audience. I would be dead in the water. I walk into audiences and I'm white, I'm urban, I'm middle class, and I'm walking in, I'm 42, and I'm walking into young, Aboriginal, north, and poor. And I'm from Toronto, by the way, now I get the cherry on the top. I mean, the only unifier is our collective belief that we can create a better future, that we can offer hope. So that's where the midwife comes in, right? Where we're okay, let's pull it out, let's do this, let's lock and load. So humor helps too, by the way. Write down humor. Nick, what are your greatest strengths? That'd be really good looking.
Oh. Thread. I think there's a general human desire, need for clarity. So to me, when I step into a training room, they always say trainers are the worst trainees. And it's very true. A lot of us up here, because most of you should probably know you guys as well, because even in Toastmasters, you're looking for clarity. And for me, one of the greatest passions of being an educator, being a trainer, being a facilitator, is to provide clarity. And if I walk out of a classroom after a day, after an hour, or whatever the length of that training session is, and I truly felt that I could not bring clarity to a concept, to the goals, to the objectives of that session, I feel deflated. I feel like it was a failure. Now, luckily for me, I'm now at a point in my career where that doesn't happen very often. to say. That's not to do my own harm, it's just, it's a lot of hard work, you really focus on providing that clarity. And so, to be able to provide that clarity, to be able to have people walk in with a need to learn, and for them to walk out saying, wow, I didn't know that, or wow, I learned something new, or I learned a whole bunch of new things. To me, that's success. And that makes me walk out of that room, walk out of that classroom and say, I've accomplished something today, I've made somebody's day brighter. So that to me is what drives me, what I really enjoy about this project.
So as far as my greatest strengths, I'll tell you what feedback I've received, because I think that's more, it's better when someone else is telling you what they think your strength is. So for example, as a facilitator, I often get in my evaluation forms, and this is first level evaluation, so this is their smiley sheet, right? So it's, she has an infectious smile whose strength is creating a very positive environment, right? And so again, when you're delivering or you're the facilitator, that's what you want to come across when people are starting to walk in the room. So that I think is a great strength, a relationship builder as well, because you're building relationships in the class. And the other feedback that I really like getting is when they say it's been clear and concise, right? So just like what Nick was saying, I make sure that the lesson plan is very clear, because at the end of the day, you want your participants to be able to say, I'm able to do what it is that they came in for.
I think it's probably about time to start mixing it up with some hard questions. What do you guys think? Want to start some hard questions for the panelists? Let's start with your feedback. Share your feedback on today's workshop. What, based on your own experience, to help the participants learn? What are your takeaways? How would you evaluate the workshop today? Maria?
Okay. So if I could offer a few suggestions as far as today's program. I think somebody mentioned designing a course was up there, right? So I think what we could have done with the program is to look at it as designing a course, right? So you would take the ADDIE model that we've been learning, right? Ask the group what course we would like to develop, and probably, because we are a Toastmasters group, something to do with Toastmasters, right? Then when you started talking about objectives, we would now have specific objectives to talk about in the class. When it came to the agreement, each group would work on an agreement, right? And then maybe present. I would have flip charts for each table. And then people are now participating. And the thing is, I think what I really want to explain is a training class or a workshop is not about the facilitator. And I think this is what I really love about facilitation. It's not about me, it's about the learner. I don't talk that much. I basically sort of give a little brief, and then I get the participants to work. So it's not about listening to me, it's about getting you to work. So if there was the role playing, I would have counted 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, get to work, do the role play. There'll be A and B and an observer. Right? So again, lots of participation, a very good icebreaker. I wasn't here for the icebreaker, so I'm not sure what that happened. But I think at the very beginning of a program, you've got to have a rock solid icebreaker. And if this is also about networking, then there would have been introductions across the board, some very interesting questions to get everybody kind of laughing and going on. And then I would remember that somebody over there said whatever, and I might want to meet them, right, for whatever reason. So a lot more interaction, very applicable exercises for each of the things that you were teaching. So whether it was learning objectives, you would have all have written a learning objective for the course that we have decided to design. So a lot more interaction and a lot more hands-on work, and not really listening to me, except for a debrief. That's my suggestion.
Perfect. Thank you. See if you can write things down. Good. Any other thoughts or feedback?
I came in halfway, so I didn't see what happened in the morning, but I know in the afternoon it seemed there was a lot of lecture. So I like kind of doing this idea is to get the audience engaged a little bit more. There was some back and forth dialogue, which was good. But I think more of the hands-on, where you're working and switched up, not sitting at the same table. I like to make my sessions really interactive and have people move around. You know, if I'm working with Maria, exercise 1, I'm working with one, exercise 2, with this person, exercise 2, having constantly moving. So Some may find that disruptive, but I think when you're moving, there's that energy going on in the room, and as long as you can harness it and keep it controlled, that really does go.
And as long as it also sticks to the objective, like,
I'd really like to take a question from Vala over there, actually.
He's demented. He's contemplating a question.
Shannon?
Oh, I mean, I'm gonna take a while, yeah, I think that's.
already qualified as a professor, somebody who talks in other people's sleep.
I'm not looking at that question.
I sent you kisses. No, that's my way of deflecting from that. I think
Gotcha.
that question's complete.
I'm just thinking that Val is probably wondering, how do you get gigs, Shannon?
Yeah, there you go. That's okay. I bring it. Okay, so I'm
Bring
going to
it.
set up a balance. So this is for you. Is anyone interested in how to get gigs?
Yes.
I'd like to know how to get
Yes.
some gigs. Okay, and I'll even tell you money if you want to know about money. The big secret, money. If you're just starting, I really heard this before, not just from me, I'm sure. Start with your inner group. Those will be friends and family. I mean, it's called tip of your nose thinking, right? I can see your nose, but you can't see mine. Or maybe you can't my nose, but right. So it's opportunities that are right there, and you start telling everyone and anyone that you are open to opportunities, right? And also, but even before that, not have an idea. Get clear, get excited, get enthusiastic about what you want to share. Right? Often they're like, I want to be a motivational speaker, I want to be an inspirational speaker, right? I never started from there. And often I find that most people who do start from there, it's interesting to see their journey. Because what is it that you have to say? What is it that's your burning desire to share? What do you believe that you simply must share as a way of you sharing your blessing or your way to serve? And not like a waiter but more as a priest or a rabbi, right? In service. In terms of gigs, then once you are clear on that, the what, it goes to the who. So who would you like to speak in front of? Associations are always looking for speakers. And aim high. Don't. My writing career changed when I stopped writing for free. Some artist friends really judged me. Changed it. You know, you don't go to a lawyer for free. Like, okay, I'm just starting off. I'll see you for free. Like, no one, dentists, like doctors, right? This is my trade. These are my tools. So get paid. If you're giving it away for free and then you're going to move into a fee model, are you going to actually have access to the people who you've given it away to free for? Do you think they're going to be like, you're right, Elton, like I'm going to totally pay you $3,000 now? They're not going to do that. So associations do pay, not all of them. I would start there. And in terms of But things that you're really, and do proposals that are 2 pages. I know I've been given jobs because they're like, we loved your proposal because we understood it and it was 2 pages. And like, 12 fonts kind of thing. So you can teach yourself how to write well, hire an editor, and it's very targeted. So you do that, there's so much prep work. So when people say, oh, you're so lucky, Shannon, wow, you landed that gig. That wasn't luck, baby. That was very targeted. That was a lot of hours. Is that kind of a good preliminary first steps?
Yeah. But can I ask, is this gigs for speaking or for delivering a specific workshop?
Both.
My advice is for both.
So for me, for workshops then, because it's your relationships. You have to actually build relationships. So for example, in my case, because I worked in the insurance industry, I have a lot of relationships with, let's say, brokerages, right? So I would then be telling them I'm now independent, and these are the subjects that I would like to deliver, right? And if that's kind of in line with what they want, they will call me. Then you speak to lots of other people, but what is really going to get you called is the relationships, because it's your reputation. If they've been into a training session of yours before, then they will want it delivered. So the way that I was working at ING, we would deliver a lot of open sessions, open calendar sessions, so people would sign up. So just right now, you guys signed up here. Maybe you really enjoyed how Ron and Roman delivered this program, and you have a group of people that you want this delivered to. That's what will get other things happening, right? So you deliver to a large group who you don't really know, and then those people have seen you and they will ask for you to come in, and then you can do a customized session. So you use the open session to get you leads for customized session.
Are those
It's your
open sessions
relationships.
free?
I don't do anything for free. And again, I agree totally with what Shannon said. I don't go to the chiropractor for free. I can't consult with a lawyer for free. I don't coach for free, right?
And on that note, going back to being a newbie, and with relationship-based selling and so on and so forth. I mean, I go back to my writer roots, and I look for trends. So what if you don't have the relationships, right? Like, what if you're like, where do I possibly begin? Is if you, again, you know what is the fuel, what you actually have to share, right? What you can actually figure out how to teach, what will be helpful, but to who and why. And that's our question too, is why now? Like, if you know, okay, storytelling, okay? And you're coming to the funeral industry as an example. Why? Like, what, you're going to teach us how to do eulogies? Are you a celebrant? Because the funeral industry now is out of their old story, right? The baby boomers don't want them around. The funeral industry is dying, or is it? So this is the new story, right? And you put that together, and all of a sudden you have created your own relevance. They're like, wow, yeah, that's solving our problem. And remember, you're not coming with, this is the, no one likes to, for an outsider to show up and say, Carmelita, this is your problem, this is your problem, this is your problem, and I have the solution. It's just like, who are you? But versus, it's called like the pitching and again, right, that's the writing for newspapers and magazines. You're pitching the possibility of a bright, better future, more profitable future. And that's exciting. People buy that.
On the concept of money, and again, I didn't want to sound terrible when I say I don't do anything for free. It's not about that. It's the thing is, I come from a corporate background. So I'm comfortable in saying this is the fee, right? If you're not comfortable with that, that's a different story, right? If you're used to volunteering your time and giving advice for free, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. But if you're going to use this as a way to earn money for yourself and as a business, then you need to be comfortable in saying, this is what I charge, right? So that's what I meant by that.
It didn't sound awful at all.
Because I
Your
will,
black hair.
because I do a lot of volunteer work and I don't expect any money because I am volunteering, right? But if it's my business and I have a certain fee, then and people ask me, I will tell them.
I have, so this is not my space, but maybe I could just say a few words from maybe the hiring end. So working for a big company who hires, like Shannon, to come and provide training or speak to us. There's an appetite. Sure, certainly budgets are always slashed, and you're always struggling to meet those budget, those shared requirements. But having a clear platform like Shannon, I've had Shannon into our company to speak to us about some training needs. They work with Toastmasters, but nonetheless, we explored opportunities on how to translate her skills and her platform to something else, perhaps something bigger. So it might benefit Shannon as well, monetarily. So there was.
Very intimidating.
There are opportunities out there, and what better way to start than Toastmasters? To build you as speakers and create this and nonprofit corporations like us to utilize for your skills and your service.
And Toastmasters is your story lab. You go up there and you try out new material. You find out what's working, what can be tweaked, and you listen to and you're very discerning about your feedback. No trolls allowed.
I've also been the one to hire speakers, right? And I've been getting I used to get a lot of calls. People just wanted to meet me because they wanted a chance, right? And a lot of times I wouldn't be able to meet with them because I didn't have the budget, depending on which company I worked for. And then at the same time, if they didn't charge enough, like if I had three people who were applying or wanting to get in to speak with me, and somebody's charged really low, kind of put that away sometimes. It just depends on what culture, what atmosphere, what type of speaker you wanted. I'm used to paying $10,000 and up for a speaker, so it just depends. And then maybe if I didn't have a budget, I would take somebody else. So don't be afraid about the fees, because I'm expecting you to tell me how much you charge.
Well, this is just an informational question, I'm trying to snatch. I came to understand that the happiness industry, known as that sells happiness and the stuff that you get on WhatsApp, all the goodies that you get, and speaking gigs and books, etc., is roughly about $2 billion in North America. People are all the syrupy sweetness coming around like treacle. It's based on cash, ka-ching, ka-ching. Any comments on that?
On the idea of cynicism?
No.
Or what, that everything out there is,
Guys
I don't
like
understand.
Robin Sharma, and what's the other, Deepak Chopra.
So selling sugar, Maharashi instead of real
Yeah,
stuff.
Maharishi, hashish, yogurt, and things like that. Hold on.
So not
That sort of a thing.
If I may, they're not known for being trainers, they're known for being motivational
No,
speakers.
but that's
Yeah.
the most serious speaking in front of a large audience.
Get a comment?
I don't know what the question is, so what is the question?
So
What-
if
what has been
I can
asked?
paraphrase the question, he's saying that if your message is really entertainment, if it's sweetness, right? You come in saying, I'm gonna teach you something, a new, attitude or a new aptitude or something, but really it's just sweetness, it's just pure, entertainment fluff, right? Then they're
But
taking
that's a
away
conditional, not an
It's a
interrogative.
$2
Is
billion
the question, is that the way to make money?
Yeah.
Because it certainly
Because it sure
is.
is for about. So what's the question?
The question relates to this, there's a $2 billion industry,
Yes.
it's a live, active industry, which involves all the tools of the trade that we are talking about, except the content, maybe something that we may agree or disagree with. They have a right to say whatever they have to say, but this is a money-making industry. So my question specifically is, there is a space there too. Have you had any such encounters where you've been asked to speak, or have you done the work of that nature?
So basically delivered entertainment
No.
instead of your training.
Or as someone who's hired trainers before, what's your view on that?
So for hiring someone like that, it would depend on the conference that I'm creating. And where within the conference. For example, if it's after lunch, or I may want a motivational speaker, I may want someone who's humorous, right? But in general, if I'm creating, let's say, a leadership program, and it's a leadership conference, and I need a speaker, I'm looking for someone with experience in leadership. Hopefully, they're a great speaker, right? But most of the time, I'm looking for a subject matter expert. That's the first part, is somebody qualified to speak in whatever topic that I want them to speak on, right? Have they done their research? Are they known for that, right? And again, hopefully, they speak well. I'm not looking for someone who speaks well first and has no credibility. It's the credibility first, and then hopefully they're a good speaker. So if I was delivering a program for CAs, that CA who's speaking, it's very hard to find it sometimes, but I would be searching for someone who could speak well. But first, they had to have the credibility or the experience in whatever topic that they had to speak on.
So this is very close to the question, like, where do you get an idea from and how to design? Like, you're saying that the people you're hiring are experts in their field. And I think this is some of the, we want to do it, but we don't think we're experts. And so the question that you hear is, how do I design a workshop so that District 60 takes it and goes, so what's your idea? Can you speak to that? So where does the kernel of the idea of what you're going to pitch to the potential client, where does that come from?
You're looking at me? Yeah,
Well,
okay.
You're pitching more often. Nick doesn't pitch anymore.
I pull that from I do a three-step process, find, oh my goodness, find, believe, and show. And one of those steps, when it's broken down, is FYF, follow your fascinations. Follow your fascinations. I mean, that's ultimately what writers do. And writers who, can still show up and still wag their tails and be genuinely enthusiastic about who they're meeting and the story. And So ultimately, where am I finding ideas? I'm finding ideas that pique my interest, that I'm kind of nuts about, that I really want to learn about. You know, if there's any meditators or Buddhists in the room, you know, the idea of the beginner's mind, I don't know. To the expert idea, have you ever had a teacher who knew a lot, or an expert, and they were horrible teachers? Just because you're an expert doesn't make you a good teacher, facilitator, trainer, or even a good human being. But yet, if you're able to go up there, to go a little bit to your point, I have seen superb speakers, I mean tight, polished, and with a $25,000 paycheck at the end. And you know what? It was polished, tight, and they didn't care, and neither did I. And I wasn't alone in that. So again, I will go back to you, and we forget when we talk about engagement and trust, those are all feelings. You know, and part of my language, you know, we make these decisions very quickly. Do you give a shit, or are you trying to sell me shit? Okay, so keep your money in your wallet, Val. Sure, don't go do Deepak and all the rest. But that doesn't mean anyone out there who's up there in the arena, you know, to reference Brownie Brown, doesn't care. They care so much that they're going in front of cynics. You know, they're in the ring. So.
Does someone else have a question about
So
development?
there's my filler word, so.
Any other questions around the idea of where these ideas come from?
Well, I would say some of these ideas come from people, right? They coach you, and you're saying, like, for example, if a consultant was a coach, you're already there with an idea, just a matter of helping you develop and design and deliver it. But ideas come from the people itself or from clients.
Sometimes it's a partnership.
Yeah,
Partnership.
yeah,
You go in with a consultant and
yeah.
you're trying to extract those ideas. So what is it that your people need? Is it a skill? Is it knowledge? Is it an attitude? What is it? And you're helping them to extract that, and then you build your program based
In
on
my
that.
design course, the Schulich, the one I took, one of the instructors said, in your assessment of needs, what you often find that what the client thinks they need really can be done with a line card or with, go look at that YouTube. It can be done very easily outside of the classroom. But what really needs to be done is to fix the attitude so that people really, it's like now OD, I'm going to ask you what this OD, organizational development, you have to actually change the organization, and it's not more, and training doesn't really, maybe you can speak to a little bit to that. You've got OD in your title, organizational development.
So I've kind of worked in both spaces. I did a couple years in HR with developers as well. It's true. So when you see organizational change, that's often the time where trainers are the most needed. And that's where HR is kind of evolved. I'm sure we've all been in an organization that's going to change. You see people leaving, you see people less worked out. It's not a good environment. So we've gone through several of those changes. And so there is a prime opportunity to educate people or alter people's beliefs and attitudes and develop programs that will help them along. Our HR division has created a multitude of change type training sessions, and sometimes they're not easy, but it's trying to create that culture, those attitudes, those beliefs, so that people find those transitions a little bit more easy. And for some people, it's survival. You have people that have been there a long time, they've got a mindset as to what this organization looks like and feels like and what they should be doing on a day-to-day basis. Well, something happens where that changes quickly. Maybe there's a change in leadership at the top. Now, the whole strategy has been changed. Where do you fit in? How do you identify what your new strategy has demanded upon you? And HR and the training group will tackle those problems and try to create programs that will be designed to help you along that.
Let's take this question.
There was a distinction made earlier between training, which is about skills, right? Kind of quantifiable in some way, and transformation, which is about emotional response. What's going on in HR is more about transformation. You're not teaching these people new skills, you're teaching them a new mindset towards their position within the company. So this is transformational training. This is transformation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
that's why there's technical trainers, and then there's soft skills or behavioral skills trainers.
Soft skills.
Yeah, soft skills, which we now actually term as behavioral skills.
And then there are the snake oil salesmen that Val talked about.
Yeah.
And so with change management, that's big, really big. Because organizations like OMERS, for example, like Nick was saying, they go through a lot of changes. But not only organizations, it's small, and I'll just use brokerages as an example. So you have your independent brokerages that are dealing with large companies, and there's lots of changes. So what do those brokerages do? They will hire a consultant to come in and do a change management program, right? And a lot of times they will hire somebody outside because they're small, right? But it also helps to hire an external person because I don't know any of the problems that you're dealing with, right? I will come in, talk to you, tell you, introduce myself and everything, talk about the process of change, and at the same time, I will ask you what's going on with the company or what's going on with the brokerage. I'll have my flip chart, you guys are telling me what's going on, these changes, then I'll ask you, what's the benefit of some of these changes? What aren't the benefits, right? And then that will come from you. I'll go through the whole change process between the ending to the new beginning. And that's the transformation, hopefully, that will occur because you're seeing from an outsider I'm going to bring up the benefits and why do we have to do this, right? And what message do you want me to send to your principal? So now they feel that they are engaged, and that's why I'm coming in, so that they can speak freely without any reporting relationships. But that becomes then transformational.
I just have a question. I want to go back. So Maria, you were saying subject matter expert ahead of great speaker, and Shannon, you're saying powerful speaker ahead of credentials. So what is the differentiator or the definer between that? Is it audience? Is it who's paying the paycheck?
So for my case, again, because corporate, right? So if I'm delivering or designing a program for all the employees, and depending if they're, let's say, new managers or senior managers, so again, it depends on the audience, right? So if it's an audience of, let's say this is client service excellence, let's say that's the theme, I'm going to look for a speaker who has delivered that in maybe their past organizations. Maybe they were a VP of client services and their company did really well. Right? So I need somebody with that type of credibility to talk to my staff or to my leaders about client service excellence. Right? And hopefully they're a great speaker, but I need the credibility first. Then, depending on within the program, do I need somebody who can lighten up the crowd? Then I'll look for that. So that could be the speaker.
So the consultant then, if they were asked by Maria to come in, they would find out, so what is it that you want to change? Is it a piece of skill, a piece of knowledge that's required, or is it a behavioral change? And then offer, maybe it's the Shannon's storytelling that's going to help with the motive that gets you that behavioral change. And then Nick shows up and gives the hardcore skill training.
I wouldn't be a fit for Maria, okay? I don't come in with an idea of like, okay, I'm going to change people's behavior. I just say that a little tongue-in-cheek, okay? I say that. I started working with HR people, like extremely policy-driven. I mean, the irony is phenomenal, and yet they decided that as soon as I put together a workshop called Influencing the Unwilling, the Unconcerned, and Unmotivated, they were like, well, you're hired! And I would open with, do you raise your hand if you know any negative people? And you had people doing this. Like, most rooms would do that. But to go back to proposals and pitches, like when I do my bio, which is the shortest part of the proposal, it's called All About Me. Like that's the title, All About Me, and it's like 6 lines. So they're welcome to look on YouTube for me or check out my website, but more than anything, it's so targeted that always the feedback is, she gets it. So if you're enough of a fit where this person is in our world, and this is why I love storytelling, is that people, I don't believe, think, well, what's in it for me right out of the gate? When they meet someone or they want to know, where am I? Like, what story am I in? And is there a role for me? You know, where am I? I think of your audience that way. They want to know like, where am I? Who are you? True, but more importantly, where am I in this, what you're talking about? Okay, so what HR has taught me is that I am what would be called a high performance interviewer. I could always get the job, but you could never keep me on the job, right? I'd either quit or get fired, right? So I could jump through all the hoops of being the interviewee, but I would be the eye roller about role play and blah, blah, blah. And I think that has become my greatest strength because I own that. So if I see an eye roller, like I get it. I don't do role plays. I mean, I'm getting to a point now when you're dealing with larger groups, like 50 in February would be my first time. It might be my show, but man, I can't do the whole show. Like that's a big group, and that's 3 hours. So to your question, what is it, expert or speaker? I think ultimately your people will recognize you. It's a matter of risk. You have to, again, what do you have to share? And preferably know what it is and how to teach it, and some credibility, absolutely. And then own it. And that's authentically you, and you believe it. Very, very quickly. Anthony Robbins, love him or hate him, I'm kind of, you can find him on YouTube years ago, and he's wearing these little shorty shorts, and I think it's the 1980s, and he's in someone's basement, I think. It's very odd. But he said, I just cheered when I saw it. He said, what matters most with presentations is 80% is what you say. 80% is the content what you say and that you care. It's Anthony Robbins, who we always say is such a speaker. He's not a motivational speaker, he's a strategist. But that's him saying, it's because he's so powerful because he absolutely is a believer. Do you agree? Like he absolutely believes that. And he's in a sweet spot. So that's where we all want to be, is when you're communicating, which comes from the word communion, to come together, you're untouchable. You'll just blow yourself away.
He's a part of the happiness industry.
Absolutely, that was for you, big man. I'll send you the link tonight. We created that, really.
I have a question. I gather it seems so easy, right? That you go and develop these workshops and present it, and wow people. But what happens behind the curtain when you're at home, you're in these workshops, or you're in the office with other people, and there's tension between you two. There's a challenge to try to get from this point to that point, or even making a decision that we should do this, no, I want that. So tell us a little bit about the struggles and how you pull.
Gosh, there will always be those struggles. You certainly, I think over time you overcome those struggles. So I'll make it personal to me. When I first started in the education field, those were more prevalent because I didn't have the experience behind me, so I had to rely on my people who I reported to kind of help me along there. Now that I'm more refined in my role, I've had more experience, people look to me as an expert. And part of the reason I moved from HR to IT, people are technical trainers, because I'm the only person in the training and education department in IT. So they look to me and they say, Nick, there's a training issue or there's a training need. We need you to come in and fix it. We need you to come in and address it or build something to help address it.
That's because you're in IT and you can talk. like
But having that background and that experience really helps in overcoming those. But you will always have people that feel that they're the expert, maybe a subject matter expert, for instance, in a technical space. Well, no, I think you should do it this way. I think that would be better. You have to rely on your expertise, what you learned from an adult education perspective, and say, this is what's going to be at home. And once they see that happen once or twice, then you can get more strength as a facilitator and say, yeah, he's the expert he worked. So strengthen the actual production, and that's really, you just have to use what you've learned, what you've used in the past, your experiences, stretch forward. That helps.
I think too, in order to create a very strong program, you need to be clear on the learning objectives. If the whole team is clear on the learning objectives, there will be less of tension, because then you will be clear on those, right? That's the hardest part of creating or designing a course. You need to be clear on those objectives. What do you want this participant to be able to do when they leave the session, right? That has to be clear. Then, once that is clear, you can design your program and what things you want to put in it, right? Whether, and how you want to appeal to the different learners. But that has to be clear. And then, of course, your confidence as a learning person, right? So, and I wanted to add to that, because as a consultant, sometimes people will call me and say, I want to put a time management program in a program that they're doing. Maybe they're doing a little conference. I said, where do you want it, right? So we've established they want time management, but they want it in the afternoon, and then they're going to celebrate after this time management program, right? So I made a mistake because I wanted to please this client, and I said, yes, okay, we'll do it, right? But I spoke to my colleague, and he says, no, Maria, don't do it. And I said, but they said they really want it, right? And so I learned from that mistake that I have to think as the expert and say no, because it wasn't that bad, but it wouldn't be my proudest moment, right? And it had not really had to do with me. They're not listening. They're going to a party after. So these kind of, but the HR person wanted to be able to tick it off her, right? Yes. And then say to everybody, we had it done, we had it done. They all know time management, right? So again, being confident that you are the expert in this field and being able to say to them, no, I'm willing to do it another time, right? Let's fit it in somewhere else. Yeah.
So next, Shannon, what was your biggest mistake in this field?
Thanks for that, Ron. Alphabetical or chronological? All right. My biggest mistake?
Or your biggest learning lesson? Let's leave.
Let's call it what it was, my biggest flaw. What did I write down there? Which one did I choose? So many come to mind.
I thought you wrote none.
Yeah.
No, I did not. I wrote you a long list. My biggest mistake was going on stage and pretending I was something I wasn't. That cost me. It cost me a lot. I can still feel it. Gave me a great speech years later, but I call that a shadow initiation. You know, and if you're going to write, you're going to suffer. But I mean, you can't fake it on stage. In the end. Especially if you don't have a poker face like me. And a shadow initiation was that I don't come from a corporate background. While other people were putting their careers together, I was traveling and living abroad. And I paid $5,000 to a business coach to tell me how to grow my business and all the rest. And I allowed her to shape me into this person, right? And my big opportunity was actually at a funeral convention. So imagine being at a funeral convention and you die on stage, right? And this was supposed to be my big break. And for 50 minutes, I suffered, and it was very, very difficult. And what was really tough, but again, I fast-tracked my own learning, is the night before I had met so many of my people, my tribe. These are people who come into the world with a vocation. They believe so much of what I believe. That they were in between stories, and I recruited all these big whales of the industry to actually come to my workshop. And I didn't feel like I recruited them, I invited them, and they all showed up. And then I went up there, right? And they were very gracious, but it was like, who are you? And then I also speak to sell. I then made them an offer. So not only did I go up there and die, I then handed out sheets making them this sales offer.
To sell what?
It was so what? I don't
No,
know.
to sell
Oh,
what?
so what? Good for you. So what? You're right, sister. To sell me, baby. Like to sell my services. It was very, that's a shadow initiation. Now, did that make me a better facilitator, human being, communicator, just everything? Yes. I even took my humor away.
That's because you
None
learn
of me was up there.
We learn most by our mistakes.
Oh, yes. I don't know how many times my mother told that to me over the phone. So that would be it, is going up there, and that's why, again, why I'm such an advocate for, finding what that fuel is.
So, I don't understand what the problem was. You were not invested in the subject matter that you offered these people?
Well, it was like a bait and switch, and that it was a workshop on storytelling. And
Well,
I
you're invested in
ultimately, pardon?
You love that.
Which I love that, and then it was the shadow initiation was, I pitched myself as a successful business owner,
Okay.
because I thought that would be my credibility. And although it stood there, and although I was having business success with my undertakers, I mean, that's just not, that's really great, but that's not really what
how
it
you
is. It
present.
turns me on, and that's not what they were there for either, right? And then, of course, I was speaking to some of the wealthiest owners, and they were like, budget and stuff, those aren't my family's problems, that's not my problem. So just everything just, I died. But yeah, I got an award-winning speech from it, right?
Is that a metaphor for the funeral industry?
But that it's dying? That's $3 billion.
And I got a question here on a card that looks good, resources. Would you direct any of the participants to go look at something on YouTube or on Google, like Google up something that would give them the next step or some tips?
Books, associations.
Again, depending on where you want to take if it's training and facilitating, then if you're looking to be hired for a corporate company, then the CSTD is what most of the organizations are looking for. You'll see it in also Canadian Society of Training and Development. Right? So you will see in most job postings that they want you to have your CSTD and your CTP, and it all comes from the CSTD.
It's certification.
Yeah, so if you don't, if you don't have that, they want you to get it. So again, if it's corporate, and that's what I can speak to, that's what they're looking for. If you're not looking for corporate, you don't need it at all, because it is because I'll say it to you, it's a money-making thing. Right? They did have this 15 years ago. No one had to have their CSTD. But now it is, because it's the benchmark.
It's money-making for them.
For them, yeah.
Is there another question? Here, let us on. What if you trigger an emotional impact in your audience, something you didn't expect, and I guess it's handling it disruptive. But it's not disruptive, it's just somebody's gone in an emotional direction, you didn't expect it. It could really cause an issue in the training going forward. How would you handle that? How do you recognize that it's happening? Do you ignore it, or do you face it?
So I think I think it's very important as an instructor, as a person at the front of the room, to always keep your eyes peeled on the audience. Don't be a person who just looks out and open up a powerful presentation on your laptop. Always have your eyes open to the crowd and try to identify the point. If people are struggling, I always think back to a session early in my career where I saw a person in the back of the room, and they were very much big gestures on their faces. So you can really tell their emotions. So look for those signs. And if you find somebody who maybe isn't getting it, maybe you can sense that they're falling behind, maybe you sense that they're falling asleep, right? Address it. Maybe go over at the next break and just have a brief chat with that person, saying, hey, is there anything I can do to help you along? Is there something that you're not understanding that help you now and save a few minutes in that time? Give them your attention. Make them feel like they're just as important, if not important, as the rest of the classroom. And I think that goes a long way. And if you do find those, as in the example I mentioned earlier this afternoon, that person that makes that emotional outburst in class and really disrupts the classroom, I think it's important to address it as immediately as possible. Give them the option to leave if you can. Oftentimes in a corporate environment, it's not voluntary. It's mandatory attendance. So you can't tell them to leave. But if they're that disruptive, then maybe that's the best option. If they get in trouble later, it's between them and their manager. You're just going to report back to the manager as to what happened. But it's important to address those things. And if it's just a short outburst and then it goes away, you might be lucky, then you can still address it at the break, which is saying, hey, listen, are you okay? Is there anything I can do or say that makes sense here? Empathize. People like empathy. As an educator, as a person part of the room, they like that empathy. And if you can get on that same level with them, it makes things run. That's what it is.
I relish an emotional reaction. I want to have I want people to have an emotional reaction because then they're alive. On a more positive note, one of the ways I think to feel more comfortable in the room, to manage your own nerves, and I realized that other speakers do it, which I thought was kind of cool, like really big speakers. At a workshop, I meet every single participant at the door, and I shake their hand. And that's not just because, my parents used to, encourage all of us to talk to strangers, right? Hello, my name's Shannon. But also now the science is out that a handshake, which is, we're all such germaphobes. A handshake is equivalent to 3 hours of face-to-face chit-chat. A really nice, solid handshake, eye contact, smile. Not like, oh, please like me, nothing like that. Something like hello, name, right? And you're already building allies as they take their seat. I don't cater to the haters. If there's haters in the group, I usually kind of have a feeling. Another suggestion is before you start speaking, find your lighthouses. Find like this lovely man, has smiled at me basically throughout the entire thing. Thank you, I adore you. Right, so there's a lighthouse, right? And those are the people you go back to. Rena's got us, right? And that's who you kind of, you always go back to, because the best advice I was ever given is if you start to die on stage or the energy gets on top of you, you can't have it come on top of you. You have no idea. It's like again, I'm going to say it, you're fueled. Like you have a blessing. You are there in service. So you're going to speak to your tribe, and not everyone is going to get it, and you're committed but not attached. Do the work. W.
Yeah.
Repeat that last bit.
It's about happiness. It was $24.95. What, the last bit?
Yeah, but it sounds like a philanderer. He says, I'm committed but not attached. So,
Committed but not attached, because if you choose not to, it's like a gift, right? If I offer you a gift, and not because I'm awesome, it's because I'm in the, like I've earned the right to say this is a gift, because I'm up here, I'm a gladiator, I'm up here facing the number 2 fear of all North Americans, death and not public speaking. And if Amy chooses not to take my gift, then you know what? Well, okay. Carmelita, right? What is it? You can only take offense. You can never give offense, and yeah, you just with the haters. See you next year. I'll deal with I'll deal with the people who wanna they see a better, bigger, brighter, more beautiful future. Those are my people. That's who I want to speak to.
Guys, speaking about not catering to the haters.
You like that?
Yeah, I love it. Don't cater to the haters. What do you think about the people who don't want to be there? The involuntary attendees. How do you handle those participants? Send them away.
That's why I'm a favorite. No, I'm joking. Maria,
The prisoners, it's called the prisoners, right? So in a corporation, if they're told to go down, they're so-called prisoners, they're marched down.
Many employees are prisoners.
Yeah, again, the thing that you can do the best as a facilitator is make sure that at the beginning of your session, you have specific things that you do, right? You have to do it all the time, right? So again, you have to, you tell them the learning objectives, then you ask them what their expectations are, right? You write those down. And sometimes their expectations you are not going to be delivering on, right? But you have it written, then you address these expectations, right? Because sometimes people will tell you, I'm only here because I have to be. I only have to be here for my hours. I only have to be here for my credits, right?
even ask.
So, well, why do they even say that is one thing, right? But if they say that, then you've got it. Good, gotcha, right? So now you've acknowledged them, right? So you're not going to have these haters anymore. They've told you exactly why they want to be there. You have now acknowledged it. You get these expectations, now you tell them what your ground rules are. If they're employees, they have to be there, right? So you've got that clear. You know why they're there. They know why. They know that you know, right? So there it is.
Let's talk about COT training. Well, pretty much mandatory, so you've got people in there that are doing this role for the third time. This is their 6th COT training. You know, they're prisoners. They have to do it for their club. What do you do with them that, you know?
So why are they doing that role?
Because the club needs it done. They like doing the role, but they don't want to sit through a 6th training session. They've done the role, they're confident, they do it well, but here Toastmaster comes along and says, you still have to go and do that training that you've heard 6 times. That's, I find that hard.
Who's going to respond to that?
I like people like that, and I'll tell you why. It's those are the people you can use as your strength.
Yes.
Take it, not take advantage in a negative way, more in a positive way. Use them as the ambassadors, as the people who can help
know.
spread their knowledge and their goodness to the rest of the group. Perhaps somebody who's there the first time in the role, doesn't know anything about the role, pair them up
Nice, yeah.
together.
Can I say something on that? I find that when I have those individuals in the club officer training, I immediately turn my entire training around. I become the facilitator. I start asking them questions and make them answer and explain that they're answering not to me, but to the individuals that are in the class that don't have the experience that they have. So now they are now the instructor. I'm just there to facilitate. I just guide it. I'm not driving the train. I'm laying the track. And it makes it extremely productive. They're very happy. The new coming individual is getting a lot more information than they ever expected. And so it becomes a win-win situation for everyone.
And that doesn't just apply to COT training, but if you have somebody in the room, because when you do the introductions, right, and this is why I think introductions are important, you gain a sense of how long somebody has been in their role, so you'll know if they are, you know, seasoned or not. And then you use them to answer some questions.
Of course, but still, it's, you know, I had Frank in my training this week.
Actually, I
Right at
wouldn't mind
the
going,
end, I kept going, "Hi,
I
Frank."
wouldn't mind going 6 times because each time I learn something different, and also it's nice to network with a new group of Toastmasters.
It's important that, Frank, great example, because those are things that you could use in your introductions. Why are we here? Why are you here? Why am I here? Talk about those things. It doesn't have to be all about what's in the role, but why are you here? What's another good reason why we're here? We've got to do this 1 hour.
Or you can ask them, what's the impact if you don't attend this session? And they'll tell you, we won't get the points. Do you want the points?
When if you have access to their email addresses beforehand, I would recruit them and almost make them into a panel
No,
and give them some
the thing is,
questions.
you have 1 hour. Believe me,
But-
it's fast. And I do. I know the ones that are experienced, and I do call upon them. How many times
good,
did I
yeah.
say, Frank, share this with us?
And sometimes I knew the answer.
Sometimes you knew the answer. And it was great when you didn't. No, you always knew the answer. And you do, but still, I still feel, though, you know, and I wish I had the opportunity to go to more training with other trainers. But on the other side, you know, you're kind of standing there going, I know you've been through this 8 times. Let's do it again.
Folks, I'm mindful of the value of your time, and I believe we promised that we would wrap up by 4:30.
Oh,
So
great.
how about we ask the panelists for one final thought? If you had one takeaway for the audience today, for everyone who came in here, what would that one message be, guys? I'll open it up to anybody, not in alphabetical order.
I would say be confident. Be confident, you are the expert. You have to think of yourself as the expert. Again, I've used this phrase a lot this week, but perception is reality. If you are the lead facilitator in the class, be the lead facilitator. Know when to ask somebody the question if they are maybe know something more than you about a particular thing. Know to go to them. But the leadership has to come from you. Know when to stand at certain places. Just know how to act, right? Because that's what people are looking at. You may not know all the content, and you don't have to, because if you don't know it, let them know. I'll find out for you later. Let's put it on the parking lot. Let's take it offline. But those are the things you have to do as a facilitator. So the confidence.
You stumped the panel.
Yeah?
No, you go last, I think you know this.
Oh,
So I'll go next. I would say, Shannon talked about the gift. Toastmasters to me is a gift. I'm so happy that I found that. I'm so happy to be in the organization. I use Toastmasters in my education career, and I use my education knowledge and everything in my education career in my Toastmasters program and everything in Toastmasters. It's reciprocal. You can use them back and forth. So if you are in an education role or something related to that, use it in your Toastmasters program and vice versa. So that's, to me, that's the best gift you can provide your club members and your trainees. So use it.
Oh, that's a big question. What comes to mind is, you know, we can look throughout history and our most beloved, respected, immortal leaders are people, men and women, who have always believed in the future. And in a time of change, which is now, in a time of cynicism and innovation and light and dark, when you speak, when you create, when you write, when you do your 5 to 7 little tiny speech, which isn't, remember that what we can talk about trust and engagement and behavior and attitude and skill, but ultimately people want to know that they are not alone, that their work matters, that they matter, and the most powerful communicators, the peaceful bridge builders are people who radiate a presence that shows and feels like I see you, I hear you, I understand you, and I still believe. You know, I see what you see, and I still have hope in the future. And that's how you go out and change the world, your world. Right? We influence not groups or companies, we influence groups of individuals. So if anything, hope, people are looking for hope. They're looking for people who can see the future and say, it's better over here. Will you join me? And that's your work.
Before we go, why don't we have a quick review of the most important lesson you learned today, one key takeaway? And is there one thing that you could do as a result of having come here?
Actually, let's go around the room and really get yes, we're gonna get that.
Mike's like, no, I had
If we
hope.
keep it really short, then we should be able to get this done and get out of here.
Where am I? What's my story? What's my role?
Beautiful. Where am I? What's my story? What's my role?
Make sure you're credible. Credibility.
Credibility.
Believe in what you're saying.
Interactivity, make it a reciprocal relationship between yourself and the people you're training.
Be as passionate as Shannon. That is incredible. Wow, I'm blown away.
I'm going to speaker, lighthouse.
Well, for me, it's the inspiration to become a trainer. So I think I got inspired by the session.
What do I have to say to the world? It has to be me. It has to be my story to the lighthouse. Make this world a better place.
Bring positive energy to the group.
You have to build trust and engagement, you know, when you with the people you're going to train.
I'm inspired, but I thought that have fun while learning is important.
Yeah. My passion is my power.
I would say, believe in yourself, believe in others, care about it all, and believe that it's got worth when you share it with others.
No one can tell their story but me. No one.
I'm gonna lose my cynicism.
Transformation.
There we go, transformation.
Somebody got a workshop for that?
I
We got a customer.
Yay.
Be myself and work on something I care about.
That's right, there we go.
Oh, my turn.
I believe in what I do and pass my passion on to the people I want to know, to my knowledge and everything.
Share, share.
And for me, is I believe if I get it right, is I see what you see, and I still believe you. So you're not alone. That's the message we're going to take to the people to give them hope. Thank you, Jen.
You see a lot of the personal anecdotes and present very positive ways, give a lot of things to think, and very enlightening.
I have quick, sorry, I'm hoarse, I'm tired. I need some caffeine. I found Shannon's transformative ideas and expressions particularly important. I think we all have stories to tell. We all have stories to move our own clocks with, and I'm still in the reflective stage, so I'll be back to you on that.
Very good.
I find that this kind of helped me do some self-reflection, self-inspire, and kind of craft what this really I wanted to bring.
Great. And will you join Toastmasters?
I need to figure out KW or Toronto first.
That's our goal. Marilyn?
I got a lot from the workshop. It was great. I was very glad to be here today, and I really did a safe to grow feeling, which people who know me know that's big.
Tracy?
I think that what I've learned is set up realistic objective and expectation and achieve it through your life experience and knowledge, and by transforming to others.
Bruce?
Sorry, you've shown that you've given me hope that there's confidence inside of me that I can hopefully bring out in doing a COT.
Absolutely fantastic.
Oh, well, what I'm learned is that I can't sit on the fence. I have to send in my workshop proposal for the fall conference. So I gotta do it. You guys made me. And to know my message and to own it and be confident with it.
Wonderful. Big round of applause for you. Join for a standing round ovation for our panelists.
So now we're over. We have your email. Expect a little bit of an email from back to you.
Thank you, and you too. I love your idea.
Nice to see you, Michael.
The problem is the 8th and the 22nd conflict, because my club is normally first and third, so like September will be fine. See you guys at a cover visit. Maybe I'm working on a second ACS. Maybe I'll do 5 to 7. So
Yeah, take care.
oh! Yeah. Well, I got your email. Maybe shoot it on to her.
No, that sounds good. Hey, nice to see you.
It's nice to meet you. Yeah, sure. Yes, absolutely.
I never got to meet you. What's your name? Very nice to meet you. Yeah, I enjoyed again, like I said. Oh, yeah. It's all kind of
Are you going to call? Yes. So I'll probably see you there. And my workshop.
So I like the idea of helping. Yeah, registered, but we'll have the 129ers. KSAs, right, especially in skill clouds, race now, but like the skills, like, so they know that they have to.
There's another in here.
The opposite A's added.
I know, but I'm not in it.
About having both the skills, they go together. I have, like I do, I did my training, but I have a couple of clients so far. Obviously, it's certainly yeah.
Don't get
I mean, I was not really, I'm kind of like actually now realizing that I'm really not anything whether it's where I'm doing a lot of the passion. So, I got kind of fascinated with design and social designers. I should take that skill set. So that's what I'm doing. No, I lived in Toronto. So this was a new city for me, new numbers. I forget. But I never lived in Toronto. I was like, I guess I'll go to
I was quite impressed.
So you're wondering that your family left?
My dad's a doctor.
Okay.
That's how I got into it. He was veterinary subject.
Should be, that's good. Anyway.
You are. Oh, okay. How many daughters do you have? That's in the two. You mean the wire inside? Okay, the wire is fine. The wire can make a wire. Here's fine. Oh, it's done on it. Yeah. What about you? No, it doesn't. Basically breakfast. There you go. No. 7:30 in the morning. 7:30 in the morning. Maybe
Oh, that's great. Wait, here, let me get your contact information.
it's not working for me because I have my day. But if anything's something for me. Yes, because you have to take later. Even though it's in the one I'm here to do practice. Yeah. The examples are great. Yeah. You like Pilar.
Oh, you're like me, you want to
Oh, that's nice. That really great. Yeah, you're the one doing this You know what came up for me when you were saying that? I was like, what is it? Just tell them to get out. Just tell them to get this go. Yeah, you're here. Yeah. Well, I was loading them. And I'm pushing up, right?
I like to.
Or they should. Yeah. No, it's.
And you know, you've got to watch this.
Oh, this guy? And then the English accent. And then the English accent. Yeah, he sounds smarter than us as well, right?
I had a client, yes, and it reminded me of when we were doing so I would say,
It's probably better, I don't want to be upset.
Right! Oh, right, I'm sorry. You can see how yeah, the sergeant at arms. And I am which was a mistake. And I know it. I read how important I should but no one else raised it. And I just knew you were there. And then I was right. So I I don't want to do so much that I actually want to like get with the club. I know, exactly. So, and I would like to actually take a art club for the summer. Did you see that last night with the shaking of the hands? I was just like, what? Yeah. So I'm not doing now. It's a first world problem, but I reading home renovation as well. I am going up. And again, that's what that I didn't expect. And I never factored it. I thought how that can be and it just, yeah, and also yeah, I know. Well, no, it was true, but you know what's nice, what I've already solved, is Carlos partying all that apparatus is now it's all storage, so I've already got one full lighting in the one in the basement. Yeah. And it's shown, and that was shown number one, and also we rarely, if ever, have to go anywhere else. So when I train the new sergeant arms, you don't take it, no, like you can in the hall, because those guys get bored all the time. They try number one rarely. That might be a Monday. No, the security guard opens it up. We have so well trained.